Hey everybody, just a reminder before we get into things that we've been doing the Lower Decks third season on Patreon at patreon.com/the Pensky File. If you're interested in our coverage of Lower Decks, that's where you have to go. We might, by the time this comes out, have just finished season 3 of that stuff. If there's only 10 episodes in the season, I think there is. But patreon.com/the Pensky File if you want to listen to all of our thoughts about the animated Star Trek. That is Star Trek Lower Decks. Anyway, let's get into this one. Clay, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about I've got to say, probably the best looking robot I've ever seen in visual fiction.
What do you think his wool sweater was what really pulled him together as a robot?
I don't know if it was the wool sweater or how the pieces, the front and the back of his mask didn't fit right. So there was a giant gap between the two sections.
We talked about it at the end of last week in the previous episode. We saw his little robot face in the thumbnail on Voodoo, and we're like, well, this could go one of two ways. And do you think, without spoiling anything, did it go one of two ways for you?
I would say it went, based on the way the robot looks, it went in a unsurprising direction. This is a weird way of me to get around to this, but basically it went deep into Doctor Who territory. Let's put it that way.
So this one is called Prototype. It is the 13th, lucky number 13 episode of the second season of Star Trek Voyager. It came out on January 15th, 1996. Written by Nicholas Correa. Directed by Jonathan Two Takes Frakes. In-universe date, not specifically known, but it's 2372. In this one, called Prototype, a sentient robot enlists Torres' help to make it possible for it to construct new members of its race. It wants B'Elanna to build a prototype, as it tells her numerous times through the course of the episode. So I think the appropriate place to start is great cold open. Barring anything else, I really like the cold open here, where you're seeing through the robot's eyes as it's floating in space, and then it gets picked up by Voyager, and then people are operating on it, and then you get a great pan, sort of like zoom into the camera in the back, or the screen in the background of the sickbay as they're working on it, and you see that it's kind of a robot-looking little guy.
I was hoping we would get Torres drunkenly kissing it on the face at New Year's, or Miguel Ferrer leaning over and saying, "You're a bad motherfucker."
Oh, yeah, they cut the scene where Harry Kim walks on, B'Elanna Torres is riding this thing's face, which might have been appropriate. So there's the reviews on this one online are pretty positive. Patrons have a lot of positive things to say about it too. I think this is a sneaky, terrible episode. I think it's extremely.
You're just trying to get back at people because nobody liked the last one.
Well, yeah, that's true. And now I'm blanking. When I was saying last week, I was trying to remember the title of the episode, and I can't remember it anymore. The hell was it? We did Resistance, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Resistance. I think this one's. I think this is a really sneaky, very bad episode. I think that it has like this sort of corny charm that makes it watchable in a way that a lot of very bad Star Trek episodes are not watchable. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't think anything works in this. This feels like a bunch of half-assed stuff thrown together, and like down to just design of the aliens, what the aliens like sort of thing is, down to what B'Elanna and this robot's relationship is supposed to be, down to the strangest interpretation of the Prime Directive that I think we've seen in a long time. I just think it's a bunch of stuff that's really, it feels really lame, not thought out, and sort of like it's all been done better in other episodes in a kind of surprising way. And I guess that the thing that I'll throw to you with that, the writer who came in and pitched this episode wrote it, and the entire production was extremely concerned that if they didn't get the robot to look right, they thought it would screw up the episode. I would say that is true. The robot does not look good, but it's the least of the problems in the episode, I think. So it's kind of a weird production consideration that I think that they ignored bigger problems at the expense of Shiny McFaceman.
So this is what it looked like when they all thought they got the robot right?
No, I think that they were unsure whether they did it. I don't even know if this is what they I don't know if this is the 5th version that got passed or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know if they got the robot right, but I enjoyed it from a ideas standpoint once they kind of got into what was going on at the end. However, it kind of I mentioned it goes into Doctor Who territory, and I think for a couple reasons, like old Doctor Who territory, not just the way that the robot looks, but also the fact that this kind of works better. I think this would almost work better as a radio play than as a TV show.
Yeah.
Because, and the old Doctor Who's have that kind of quality to them where like you can kind of shut your eyes and listen to them. They've actually released a lot of them on as recordings.
Right.
But one of the reasons I say that is because they give you this interesting idea that ultimately I feel like they kind of undercut when they really explain it. That these two, basically like the in this war that was going on, the warriors have died, but the weapons still fight each other.
Yeah,
which is a pretty interesting idea until they take it to Terminator Town and explain that the humans tried to make peace and tried to stop the robots from killing, but then the robots realized that was not the most efficient use of their time. Whatever the explanation is. That makes it a lot more stock, and kind of like you said, I've seen it done better.
It's
in
so
other
predictable.
Places. Yeah,
it's so predictable.
I really liked the idea that like these were just leftover weapons from a war that caused two races to go extinct, and the weapons were still fighting.
Yeah,
that's kind of an interesting idea. But yeah, when they get into this stuff, it's just a janky robot talking, like basically reading out of a book for 5 minutes at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting stuff, but the way that they chose to do it was very not very cinematic, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, lest you forget, like even the robot idea here, I think, has been done better in Star Trek. Like the TNG Arsenal of Freedom episode that we covered on Patreon a little bit ago, which is the first season of TNG, which is no great shakes, but I like the episode enough. It's where they go down to the planet and the arms dealer, automated arms system is still active. So they're like running around as this weapon that wiped out the population still is armed and dangerous.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And like, that's not a very good episode, but at least it's kind of fun in some ways. I didn't think this one is fun at all. And I think once you get past the cold open and you get to the robot thing, like it starts off on a weird foot because I have no idea why B'Elanna Torres feels the need to save this thing so desperately from the get-go. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like it fits her character. Even Harry Kim is like, listen, we've been working on this for 45 minutes. I'm about fucked. I'm done with this thing. Like, I don't want to work on it. And she's slaving away, and she wants to make the plasma hearts that'll power this thing in the Iron Man suits, and it'll become alive, and then it comes alive. Then they have a strange conversation with Janeway about the Prime Directive, right? And there's this odd justification that Janeway comes up with why they can't help anybody. And robots don't deserve help, even though, as they mentioned later in the episode, Data is still prominently in their mind about this stuff.
Right.
And then, so after Janeway and her have a conversation about the Prime Directive that doesn't make any sense to me, at that point, the robot is like up and walking around, and Tuvok has a throwaway line at the beginning about like, maybe I should point a gun at this thing every once in a while. And they go, no, I'm sure it's fine. It's just a friendly robot. And then, of course, the robot abducts B'Elanna and goes back. And it's like, everything about this to this point that's brought me to where the script needed to get me makes no sense. And it's like completely inconsistent with how the characters should be acting. And I find it really distracting.
I actually kind of enjoyed the Prime Directive discussion because it's such a whacked out way to interpret the Prime Directive.
Yeah.
Where it's like 4 different backflips it's like four different things that they've done before singularly, all used in one place, where it's like this idea that would the Prime Directive does not allow for aiding a inanimate creature without the capability of reproduction to reproduce.
Right.
Because I mean, like honestly, it's not that crazy when she explains it, because it's like, you know, you have no idea what's going to happen if you do this.
Well, she turns out to be right, but they don't take any precaution that defends against that being the possible outcome of it. You know, like
yes,
B'Elanna turns out to be, or Janeway turns out to be right that programming this thing to reproduce is actually creating more weapons of destruction. That would be a bad thing. But Janeway herself does not say we should lock this thing down because we don't know if it's a threat at the very start. You know?
Well, yeah, I think she's working more on like the reason why you can't bring certain animals over country lines kind of thing, where it's like if you introduce, you know, it's the joke from The Simpsons when they go to Australia and Bart brings a frog and then the frogs just reproduce and take over all of Australia. Mm-hmm. Like it's less of I think it's less of a weapon thing and more of just like a, who knows how these things are, who knows how the reproduction of these things is going to affect the ecosystem or the surrounding planets or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's an interesting idea, but it is sort of like I don't know. It's really weird if you kind of take a step back and think of this as B'Elanna arguing with Janeway over whether or not she has the right to create life. It's just it's a really kind of weird. This whole thing has a weird sort of like unself-aware Frankenstein thing built into it.
Yeah, yeah.
Where it's like B'Elanna
gives birth to something.
Yeah, like ultimately I guess she does get the full Frankenstein in that she realizes what she's done is a mistake.
That incredibly awkward final scene where it's like overtly trying to compare what she went through to having a child and then having to kill it. And
yeah,
it doesn't work for me because I mean, it ties back to I just don't find this to be a B'Elanna story at this point for that character.
Well, like I disagree that it's weird for her to be so focused on this thing, because I mean, you know, she's an engineer, she's into this stuff. It's you find a robot floating in space that is kind of working. Mm-hmm. You know, I think it was something that she'd be interested in, to the point where she wants to bring it, you know, fix it, and if it is a sentient thing, save its life. She ends up I like
the half Klingon character. Kinda, you know, like,
well, I don't know. I mean, you know, science is science to her. Like, how much of this is wanting to save somebody's life, and how much of it is just like, again, like the Frankenstein analogy. Frankenstein wasn't doing all that stuff because he really wanted to create life and make the world better. You know, he was just doing it because he wanted to see if he could.
Yes.
And he ended up getting, you know, both of them ended up getting screwed because of it, and smacked down by the larger hand of the universe.
Because I get a real... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I get a real sense of personal frustration from B'Elanna in this one, especially in like the early scenes. That is not... She's frustrated with a robot or a machine that she can't get to work, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's not treating this thing like she treats the warp engines at any point. And I think it ties into a bigger issue that this episode has, which is self-contradictory, is that her understanding of this thing and its like primitive robotness kind of flies in the face with Data and stuff like that. And she mentions Data in this episode, which makes it all the more awkward, because I just don't... The episode seems to want to really make you aware that, remember that character called Data? And then it acts as if Data never existed the entire time, because...
Yeah. I think it's tough there too, because like they're specifically name-checking Data, who we all know went through the...
his trial.
His trial and Measure of a Man, to be declared as a living creature, where these robots are decidedly different than Data. Like they are not.
They're
I would not
automatons.
say.
Yeah,
they are not anywhere near the same spectrum as Data. Like
Right.
they cannot create things. They're bound by their programming. It seems to me like they cannot learn.
Yeah.
Which makes them completely inferior to Data.
They do they do a specific job, it seems. Like even on the ship, he's like, I do this thing on the ship, and then the other guy does the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a weird comparison to make, and it is strange to me that someone like B'Elanna, who has a working knowledge of Data, would refer to this other robot as a sentient creature, which it's really not.
No, yeah, I would agree. And that connection that she has with it at the front felt like, to get back to your original point, I didn't feel that this was B'Elanna working on a mechanical problem and it's like keeping her up at night. It felt like a family member was on his deathbed and she's going to like the sick bay to talk to the doctor about stuff.
Yeah, I didn't really get I got it more as though she was like, she's got a new problem in front of her that she can't solve. And it's just something that's becoming obsessive, Yeah. You end up going down a rabbit hole about something new like that, something, especially for her, something that's an engineering novelty. I can see her getting that obsessed with it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we can, I guess it's the cliche of agree to disagree. I almost feel that Harry Kim makes more sense as it feels more in line with Harry Kim's character to me to be super invested in a problem. I don't think I've ever been given the inkling that B'Elanna is this kind of obsessive person. Like even Janeway, I think, would be more in line to go along with that kind of a thing where she gets like absorbed by a problem or whatever. But Janeway
she just was like spending her coffee break down there helping, I guess. I don't know what she was doing down there.
Getting her hands dirty with the plasma pump or whatever it comes out to be. It's so I mean it builds from there, and then you discover that there's other alien or other robots and that they have different ships and that they fight each other because their creators did them.
I think that they missed a great opportunity when the other ship showed up. And they do that like full frame of Janeway when she's like, it seems like we've stumbled into some sort of conflict. I was really hoping she would say some kind of war, some kind of tech war.
It's robot wars. One of them has a slammy little axe on the top of him. He's going to hit you.
Kids need to learn about tech war sooner or later.
Battle bots coming at you. Yeah, I mean, I wonder, my criticism of it doesn't really go beyond that. I feel that so it has like B'Elanna's motherhood thing that it starts and then tags the episode with at the very end. It has a Terminator type story where the machines destroyed their creators, which is another thing. It has a weird Prime Directive, like we can't help these people because, even though they have warp, which previously seemed to be the deciding factor, we just don't allow people to reproduce if they can't do it naturally. Doesn't B'Elanna have something that pushes back against that point or something? Like if
yeah, I'm sure she does. I don't remember.
It was like a biological was like if someone was like infertile.
Oh yeah.
And Janeway just hand waves it away. She's like, "Well, things are complicated. Who can know about stuff like that?"
She doesn't even. I don't think Janeway even pulls the robot card, does she? She doesn't even play the measure of man card, where she's like, "These aren't people. These are just This is like if you went to a planet and just started fixing cars."
Yeah, I mean, she brings up
you taught the cars how to reproduce. The cars from Maximum Overdrive. You've taught them how to reproduce.
It would lower the costs. I don't think I don't know if Janeway. I don't think Janeway pushes. I don't think she specifically mentions the robot factor. I think she just brings up the fact that if they can't make more of themselves, then it's not a good idea to allow them to make more of themselves. It's this
just like the Irish.
It's a continuing what's up the long ladder, the cloned Irish in that episode of TNG. I think it's another weird episode. That's kind of what we had a couple episodes ago where. People found the second caretaker, and I was just thinking that they seem remarkably uninterested in finding the second caretaker and going home. Janeway just doesn't seem that interested in this thing. In both ways. Like, she's not interested in enough to take it seriously as a threat. She's not interested enough to really weigh the pros and cons of helping this thing. She just gets a coffee from the replicator and sits down and it's like, I'm not dealing with this today. Yeah. This is not my story. And I don't know. I think it's an episode that feels like it's a whole hodgepodge of shitty parts thrown together like that. And I don't think that any of those things that I just listed come across as the main point. Like, even the aliens killing their makers comes across as a half-assed plot twist at the end that's supposed to like blow your socks off or something. And it's not.
Yeah, like I said, it just gets too backloaded when it's like the other alien shows up. And the robot's like, oh, that's right. I forgot to tell you about the entire history of how our makers were killed. But then we keep fighting, which is something that if you have a minute, you should sit down because I go on for quite a bit.
his robot-y voice and his robot-y face. And there's a scene where B'Elanna's talking to like Janeway on the over the communication screen, the view screen or whatever, and the robot like pokes his head into the screen.
The robots do have a flair for the dramatic, though. They know when to step in frame.
Yeah, they're very they're good at that. He's good at being his boss. I don't know. So you liked it. I've been fairly harsh on it, but you don't seem to think it was that bad. So what was your main? You liked the sort of like idea aspect of it, I suppose.
Yeah, I liked the ideas, but I think they just didn't wrangle them in any way that was particularly satisfying. Even the thing at the end where like she does create life, it's like, okay, she did it once, but the whole point of this is that you can do it more than once, but you have no idea if it'll work again. So like it kind of undercuts some of that stuff for me. Yeah, I like it. It seems like an episode that had too many ideas for a single episode.
What would you focus on in this? What's the good idea here, I guess, that you could flesh out? Because I think the main one that's sitting here is the Prime Directive argument.
Yeah.
But I think they realized fairly early on that the argument doesn't make a lot of sense for the crew to make. Like, there was the other one.
I think it works if you keep the robot war aspect of it, where
like they know about that.
Like eventually, basically that Janeway is ultimately proven right by it.
Do you think that justifies? Like, doesn't she have to be wrong at the start then to make that interesting at all?
Not necessarily, because I mean you're focusing on B'Elanna, who thinks that Janeway is wrong, and so ultimately when Janeway is proven right, that's B'Elanna's failing, not Janeway's. So because the focus is on B'Elanna and what she thinks is the right thing to do.
I guess that's the confusion there. So say that like. Isn't it always right for B'Elanna? Isn't it right to help these aliens, even if you don't know what the outcome is going to be? Like, for Janeway to be right, it entirely depends on this weird random fact that the aliens are at war with each other to this point.
Sure.
She would be wrong if that was not the case, right? Would you agree? Like, is it rational to not help them preserve their species?
Well, yeah, I think they're leaving stuff on the table there with the robot element of it, because it's like, what is preserving the species of robots?
Yeah.
Why do we need to help the Roombas coexist?
Yeah. I mean,
because if it was a living species, I think, yeah, you probably it's a harder argument for Janeway to make.
Yeah.
Unless have they crossed this threshold at all before? Like, is this? Because I mean, isn't this kind of in the same area of like Dear Doctor and stuff like that, where it's like we can't give them the cure to this disease because that would be breaking the Prime Directive? Isn't it's kind of in the same ballpark?
It's the same. It's the same thing as that. I think that this one is less well developed. I get hazy on the Dear Doctor specifics because I know that people like Royo like to push back on that episode, but I honestly don't remember what the controversy was in that episode well enough to talk about it. Mm-hmm. I think that like there's an episode of TNG. I don't know if you remember. They have those little exocomp things, which are like little floating egg-shaped robots that fix things, and they send them into danger. But then they eventually learn that they are like interested in self-preservation and things like that, so that they determine that they are then a sentient creature that has like the rights of everybody else to do what they want. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you're going to do this episode, if that's going to be your sticking point, I think you have to do a better job with the robot, both design, like his character design and his physical design.
Yeah. No, there's definitely, you need to have an ounce of sympathy for the robot, right, which you do not.
What you do for the exocomps, which is interesting. You feel bad when one of them dies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. These robots are not in any way sympathetic. And like it is putting a bit of a hat on a hat, I think, with them, because when they do capture B'Elanna and they do turn into the kind of thing where it's like, if you do not succeed, we will kill you. And then on top of that, you add in this war element.
Yeah.
You're getting a little bit complicated, I think, because the key is that B'Elanna needs to do this because she has some sort of sympathy for these people, or these robots.
Yeah.
And if she goes of her own will, like if she goes against Janeway's wishes and goes with this robot willingly to go help this thing, and then she finds out what she's doing is perpetuating a war, then I think it works a lot better.
Yes, I would agree with that. Like I think that the way that this becomes interesting to me is if it's somewhat ahead of its time and it has a ex machina outlook on things, which is that the robots do a better job of fooling B'Elanna into thinking that they are something that is operating outside of like their destructive programming that they're doing. Mm-hmm. And if she was convinced by that, like she had the argument that, like, I think that the episode has to center around Ascension's argument, which is that these things aren't as advanced as Data, but they might be close enough where there's something here that we have to work with ethically. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, they can just sort of reveal themselves to just be operating as what they are, like an ex machina, which is that the whole thing is just a ruse so that the machine can get out into the real world.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a better ending here, where B'Elanna feels that she's been betrayed. And then you don't really have to focus on this, like, because it shoots itself in the foot with the motherhood aspect, which is that you're supposed to feel that B'Elanna created life and then had to murder it at the end, and she feels bad about that. And I don't feel that's the central conflict here, because the episode hasn't shown anything of these robots to be endearing enough where B'Elanna would find that to be the case. You know, it's almost like she's linking her professional engineering job with a desperation to be a mother or something at the end. It doesn't track for me that she should feel that way.
I don't know why they didn't just go the full Data with it. I mean, especially when you're working with this
costuming
design. Let's put design in quotes here.
Right, just make them like humanoids, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the Delta Quadrant. Nobody knows what's going on out there. There could be a whole race of Data level androids out there that we've never seen before. What's stopping them? You know.
Yeah,
and that way, at least, you know, you got a human face on the damn thing, so you can sympathize with that.
Right, and it's a twist on Data, right?
Yeah,
where these are not Datas.
Yeah, you're making the Data argument. You're making the dark side of the Data argument with creatures that you recognize as Data-esque instead of the cover of that Queen album. I forget which one it is.
I would agree with that.
What a baffling design! Like it's really
what's the word? I find his sweater to be so funny that he wears clothes.
Oh, the sweater is ridiculous. Like it's like they were trying to do Metropolis or something, but they had like $15 and a can of chrome spray paint to work with or something.
They just have the mask because it's obviously, not spoiling anything here. It's obviously a guy in a suit, but they just only have the costuming for his head, really.
Yeah, it's just just even the head, though. It's like, what a fucking terrible design.
Yeah.
Like, it's not good.
Well, I mean, it's trying to invoke like Lost in Space aliens or robots, right? Like, it's trying to invoke a campy, like, B-movie type thing, I think. Do you get that sense? Like, I see that as the entire point of that design, is that it's supposed to be a kind of dated, strange-looking cultural callback to, like, a earlier design or something. But the story just doesn't back up why that would be the case for these things.
The only reason I could think that they did that is to specifically make the robot disarming. To make it seem
like stupid, basically, like it can't.
Yeah, to make it seem less evolved, and so so they're trying to get you to sympathize with it the way you would sympathize with like a dog, as opposed to the way you would sympathize with a person. And I think that's so. It them turning evil is maybe a little bit more. I don't know if it's meant to be more of a surprise, or again, it gives me big Doctor Who vibes. But yeah, I don't know if they're trying to be campy with it. The episode where B'Elanna has to create life and then murder it might not be the episode to get campy.
Yes. Yeah. That's I mean, yeah. Yeah, and I think that just I don't think you want them to be campy and stupid at the start. I think that's just it's not the way that the point of the episode is supposed to work. Yeah, I don't know what it really is. Maybe it's a callback to how the idea itself is older. I don't know. It doesn't strike me as a new novel concept, and it's surprising that the character's treated as if it's a new novel thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the idea of the weapon that lives on past the end of the war that's what Forbidden Planet is, right?
I think so, yeah.
Where they go down and there's a giant monster or whatever, and they find out that the monster was the weapon that they created and killed everybody.
Yeah.
So
not an original idea at all.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they are trying to harken back to that kind of stuff because they're playing with so many well-worn ideas here. But again, I don't know if you're getting into a discussion about the ethics of helping a race procreate. I don't know if it's the time to get silly.
Yeah. And just a final point about the contradiction here, the B'Elanna's like self-doubt or like belief that she killed a living thing. The thing that she stabs, the prototype, all it does is it lays there and goes like, please insert my programming. Please insert my programming. Yeah. It's not begging for its life or anything like that as B'Elanna has to kill it. It's just this husk of a shell that can't do anything. And it certainly strikes an argument against like why you feel you need to keep these things alive, or why
she created life the same way I created life when I fixed my vacuum cleaner.
Right.
It's like
it's
like
Dr. Union Singh is rolling his eyes, I think, somewhere.
Yeah, it's not like the thing set up and went, "Mother,
yeah, thank you.
I am." It's like no.
It starts quoting philosophy or something. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
that was a strange choice, I think. Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's confused. I don't have anything else to say about it. Are you ready for patron thoughts? Maybe that'll give us something.
Sure.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. You can support the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File. If you're so inclined, you leave your dollars and you get to leave comments as well on the upcoming episodes, like the ones that we're about to get to. Patreon.com/the Pensky File. Extra podcasts, extra communications, and extra comments from you. So let's go to Prototype here. I have to click into your little Discord name. There we go. I've got you there. I'll go. You can go first, I guess. Here, this is a nice short one. Can ease you into it with Tax Owl Bear Prototype.
Prototype, a very neat episode, even if the concept has been done before. The vaguely 1920s-like design of the robots is both great and budget-friendly, even if robots of this kind almost feel out of place in the Star Trek universe. I think the word great is doing a lot of work there.
Heavy lifting. Clef says, Prototype, some robots force Torres to enlist when the reproduction needs an assist. The costume's just okay, but Frakes ends things his way. This episode probably shouldn't be missed. 5 days on a robot ship without food, water, or bathrooms out of 5.
Wow. Okay.
Kyle Barrett with the next comment for Prototype.
Prototype. The robots wear clothes. It's a weird thing to get hung up on, but it's so bizarre and distracting to see a classic metal robot wearing clothes like C-3PO wearing a coat in The Rise of Skywalker. Prototype has an interesting new take on the Prime Directive, which it doesn't quite fully explore. The episode doesn't truly begin until Janeway and B'Elanna have their discussion, with the first act being a complete waste, and then the ethical debate disappears for a while until the end. What we get is good, but it needed to be more focused, and B'Elanna is sadly already losing some of the fire from her personality. 3 realizations that robots that aren't data like androids feel weird in Star Trek out of 5.
Yep.
What about what's-her-face? The one from Discovery that dies.
Oh, Atrium?
Yeah,
Arium,
although I guess she's like a cyborg, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not the same thing.
Cyborgs are real people, not like these alien robots. Patrick Seba says, building the Cybermen, what could go wrong? With well-twisted babble, the script to prolong. Torres, you're my Doc Who, maybe Doc 22, but ask the real question, where was the robot schlong? 3 knockoff Fritz Lang movie posters out of 5. Eric McGowan with the next comment for Prototype.
Prototype, a pretty solid, if somewhat dry episode. The twist where the robots have been fighting long after the creators have died is surprising and a pretty interesting idea. 3 technobabble monologues out of 5. There was a lot of technobabble in this. I didn't mind it, though. I was on the fence because, like, the scene where she talks to the doctor is probably the densest with that stuff.
Yes. Has a point, though. It's
right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like there's a point to it that I think makes it okay because, you know, that's what we kind of always say is the technobabble for the sake of technobabble is no good.
Yep.
But if there's a point driving it, then it usually works. And I think I didn't hate it in that scene, so I think it works.
You know what the worst? I don't even know if it qualifies as technobabble, but it maybe kind of sort of does because there is technology involved in it. Towards the end, when we haven't talked about Paris's rescue.
Oh, yeah.
But towards the end, he's in the shuttle trying to like fly through a hole that they've shot in the shields or some bullshit that you can't see.
Yeah,
and
it's I think it's the shields. He makes his shields on the same vibrational pattern,
sure.
or whatever, so he can drive through them or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a scene where he's in the shuttle doing that, and Tuvok and Chakotay are in engineering or something, standing next to each other at a panel, and there is no exterior CG shots of what the shuttle is doing, so it's just Chakotay and Tuvok talking to each other, and Chakotay has some line where he's like, "Damn, missed that one," and and it's the lamest shit I think I've ever seen in this show. Where just like there's just no energy to it. It's awful because it's just relying on the camera watching an actor deliver like what he's seeing on a view screen or something. It was really awful.
Yeah.
Matt Ross says, Prototype. It reminded me of an old Doctor Who episode with wayward robots and a bit of Terminator. It had the idea of a decent concept. I don't know if it was the 45 minutes or just in general a rush, but it felt rushed, and I think it needed something else, and oddly I like it, sort of. I can see getting annoyed at Janeway. You're not listening to the chief of security. B, this is a lost ship of exploration because of you. Stopping to pick up a robot ain't going to help them get home so fast. At least when B'Elanna kills the Prototype, its annoying request for information stopped. And no, it's not a child. 2.8/3 bots out of 5. Prototype. This is Aaron Million. I copied his name for some reason, so it'll come over to you.
Prototype. This episode has some similarities to the original version of The Thing. A group of isolated explorers happens upon something that they don't know what it is. They revive it only for it to turn on them. Yet another dumb decision by Janeway in ignoring Tuvok's advice to leave it alone. How were no security guards posted around the robot? And why was Torres so obsessed about fixing these robots? 3 builders out of 5.
Very good questions, in my opinion. Jaron Hatch says, so I forgot to write down my thoughts after rewatching this one, and now trying to do so only a few days later, I find I have no real impression of it, good or bad. I've seen this episode multiple times over the years, and my only thought was to shrug and say, it's the one with B'Elanna and the robot. Voyager, alas, has more of these kinds of episodes than any other Star Trek series. You know, the kind of one-word episode titles that vaguely refer to some generic sci-fi plot and don't leave much more of an impression than that. Since I can't remember what I thought about it, I guess I'll say it's a 2.5 out of 5. Inflating the rating there. Point extra G with the next comment.
Prototype. I really liked everything about the cold open, the low-quality audio and video, and the cinematography. I enjoyed this one a lot, but it's hardly a unique story. What is it with all these damn machines going and killing their creators? B'Elanna had some pretty bad dialogue in places, and a lot of the line readings, not just from her, weren't great either. I do really enjoy seeing Janeway using her science background. I guess that's just her standing there poking the thing. As that background makes her unique among Trek captains outside of Michael Burnham, who is apparently good at everything.
Mm-hmm. Changeling says, going out on a limb here, but this episode reminds me of a Rick and Morty plot. They come across a weird sci-fi thing. Torres, Morty, wants to help Janeway. Rick wants to help Janeway. Rick says it's better to let it die. Torres helps anyway. Turns out sci-fi thing was evil all along. Do something horrible to resolve the plot. Kill a new form of life. And the lesson is that caring about things is wrong. 2 assembling RoboCop opening sequences out of 5.
You know, going back to the last comment briefly.
The one I just read, really, or Poindexter G's comment?
Poindexter's. It is surprisingly, I don't know if I've ever thought about it before, but the thing that makes Data so unique, actually, is that he doesn't try to kill his creators.
Yeah, he tries to love them.
He's like the only android robot in science fiction that doesn't eventually like turn on its crowd. Star Wars aside,
does, though. Lore has the daddy issues of the two of them. Yeah,
but the fact that Data doesn't makes him unique.
Yeah,
you know, I don't count Star Wars because those are slaves. But
they are.
And technically, if you want to get really technical about it, C-3PO does turn on his creator because his creator was Darth Vader, and he helps the Resistance kill Darth Vader. So, So it is. I wonder if that's why when we were watching Picard, it felt so weird when they got into like the android massacre stuff.
Yeah,
because it's like in Star Trek, the robot doesn't generally do that. Like that's kind of the whole point.
Yeah, it's Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I like the Star Wars reference because I feel like the characters in this episode should be treating these robots like the Star Wars droids are treated.
Yes, yeah,
that would make more sense to me. It brings up the Star Wars thing is always weird because those droids do seem to have personality and a kind of life that exists within them, and these robots even feel less than the Star Wars droids. So
yeah.
Woodrow is the comments I just sent to you.
Prototype. The prototype for Seth MacFarlane's Isaac android, I believe. This was a good use of the crew's non-Starfleet background. If a Starfleet character got into this situation, the regret would be around not following the rules. But by using Torres, the regret stems from Starfleet being right. And as an examination of Starfleet ideals, it carried more impact to see a non-believer face this crisis. 4 force lightnings out of 5.
And this is the final comment from Artorius. Prototype. So Skynet wants to have children. What could go wrong? After watching every movie on robots and AI, you already know this is a bad idea. Janeway's logic for non-interference violating the Prime Directive seems to be wrong, considering they've already achieved warp drive, and the feds have saved many societies from going extinct, so the Prime Directive shouldn't apply. But one should never discount the logic of Tuvok. On a side note, the U.S. Air Force has Skyborg already operational for AI wingmen to assist fighter pilots in their new 6th-generation program. 2 scary Judgment Day prophecies out of 5.
The warp drive thing is a good point, actually. It really, the Prime Directive should not apply, actually, right?
No, it shouldn't. No. So that's where Janeway just really goes off in the weeds about something.
I think Janeway just doesn't like robots.
She might. I mean, she didn't seem particularly interested in this ugly robot thing. So maybe she just has some sort of horrible bias. The way that the Ferengi are hated, Janeway just hates robots and androids. That's it. A fairly high response from the patrons, I think. Thanks, everybody, for leaving your thoughts about this one. Prototype. Do you want to go first, Clay, with your rating on our 1 to 5 scale about this one?
I'm going to give it a high 3 for me. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it. The ideas were fun enough that it kept me engaged, even though they were very messy and kind of unexplored. I think you're right, though. I think it is kind of masquerading as a better episode than it is.
Yep.
But I still enjoyed it.
So I have to decide if I give this a 1.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm trying to I think this has strong potential to be the worst episode of Voyager that I've seen to this point. For all the reasons that I stated before, I think that it's inconsistent to the characters that we've built up. I think that the setup makes almost no sense. I think that it is a just twist after twist, or like flailing to find something that it's about, and it never ends up actually finding anything. And so it just sort of like careens between storylines, making none of them make sense and ruining all of them at the same time. The reason that I would say it might sneak up to a 2 is that its corniness and incoherence kept my attention in a way, but I think it's worse than just not functioning. I think it's just dead on arrival, really. So I'm gonna give this a 1 and make this my first 1 for Voyager. I didn't like it all that much, and I think it was a fairly large failure on the show's part, costuming aside and the robots aside. There were ways to fix it, but I just don't think they ever got close to any of them doing it. Also, final point. Kes needs to have 2 jobs on the ship. She pours coffee and serves as the nurse on Voyager.
Yeah, there's only 80 people on the ship. People gotta double up.
They can walk up to the replicator at Neelix's thing and get their own stuff. It was a kind of I guess my true final point. It's still a 1, but I don't know if the show is getting better with Neelix, because I thought that Neelix and B'Elanna's conversation, even though it was completely useless and didn't do anything for the episode, was kind of nice between those two.
Yeah, I like that part. Yeah, because having him, I feel like that's more of the role that he should be playing, is sort of the de facto counselor type.
Yeah, he's kind of a Guinan knockoff, unfortunately, at that point.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he really is. Yeah.
But it's better than being annoying, I suppose. In the way that Tuvok is a ripoff of Spock, I'm fine with Neelix just being a ripoff of Guinan, if that's less annoying.
Yeah.
All right. Clay gives it a 3. I give it a 1. This might be our biggest discrepancy yet so far. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for supporting the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File. Thank you for leaving your thoughts about that episode. And Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we head out of here?
Again, I'm going to be at New York Comic Con this year, which is the week of October 5th, Thursday through Sunday. I'll be at Artist Alley signing comics, doing sketches, and the whole shebang. So swing on by, say hi, and yell at me about Star Trek. Ask for a what the hell is it? I want to get it. Ask for a picture of Kravik 122 or 3947. See if you can draw one. Yes, for you. if you request a sketch of one of the robots from this episode, I will do it for you for free. Well, that's the way you say that you're a fan of the podcast without embarrassing everybody that you're listening to our podcast and that we have a podcast. So that's like the secret handshake. Rick Worthy, isn't he an NBA player? Rick Worthy. I don't know. He's an actor. No, he's just played. No, he's Jannar, I guess, in the Star Trek Enterprise episode. Nothing that we'd remember, but he played both the gold robot and the main robot in this episode, in case you were curious about that. That's it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. What range? What range? What variety? What acting? Thanks, everybody, for listening. Check out all the other stuff. Check out the stuff on Patreon. Subscribe to Patreon, and we'll be back next week with the next episode
which is called, I have it right here, I'm going to write it down, Alliances. See ya.